recoveries. More than 2 months later, it's appearing to be taking a toll, and the resilient nature of Kenyans is once again manifesting itself by the urge the Kenyans show to come out of their houses to resume their normal chores. Following the President's address of the nation on 23rd May 2020, where he said, and I quote, "Life must go on," in part of his speech. Start to be optimistic as people expect lifting of the curfew, national curfew, that is dusk till dawn curfew, with some of the strict measures put in place by the president for as far as addressing this pandemic is concerned. This afternoon, as we are tackling about normalcy resuming, we'll also be talking about education coming back to life. And I'm joined by Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, who is a board member at the Muslim Education Council. Monasi Musali, a PR and image consultant, is also joining us this afternoon. Not forgetting a very able, lovely Dr. Yubrina Mora as well, who has joined us this afternoon. Later on, I'm going to be joined by Damaris Kipto, who's from the National Emergency Response Committee, as well as we are talking about resuming, or rather normalcy coming back. Or should we get used to our new normal? Gentlemen and ladies, welcome so much and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Monasi Musalia.
Yes, Faisal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thanks so much for making time for us this afternoon. And I'm just going to start with you this afternoon, Monasi. And my question to you would be, the government is, from the address of the nation, just as I mentioned in the introduction, the president on 23rd of May in his address of the nation hinted on possible lifting of the curfew, not mentioning flexing of some strict measures. So Kenyans are optimistic for as far as normalcy resumption is concerned. Now, from where you're standing as an investor, as a PR and image consultant, how do you recollect yourself to start all over again, or do you just get used to the new normal and continue with life the way it is?
That's a great question, and I think what we need to look at is, are we equipped with the necessary skills, the necessary abilities to be of value, regardless of the environment and the circumstance? Because if we relied heavily on a job or a situation being the way it was before, and now that things have changed, we are now supposed to change with it, we're going to be in trouble. So I recommend strongly that whoever is going through this period, whether you've experienced a loss in a job, or you've been retrenched, or your environment has changed, you have to have the skills to be able to allow you to transcend any kind of environment and be of value and of service wherever it is that you are. The job should not define you. The environment should not define you. What needs to define you is the value and the skills that you have.
Interesting that you mentioned about the skills that one needs to equip himself for him to be able to transcend any business environments he found himself in. What are some of those skills, maybe?
These are skills that someone cannot take away from you. The reason why education is such an important thing is because it's the one thing that no one can take away from you. But beyond education, you have things that you can exchange for value. If you used to be a photographer in your previous job, did you have enough skills that can then be given to other people who are not necessarily part of that company? Did you learn a language that you can now translate and use to the benefit of other people, for your skills as a translator? I'm talking about any kind of skills. If you were baking for fun from before, now is the opportunity to probably look at baking as an opportunity to make some money, as opposed to saying, you know what, this was my hobby. So anything that you were good at, that you were talented at, whether you were being paid for it by virtue of a job or you did it for enjoyment, now is the time to take it seriously, to develop it, to nurture it, and to start to sell and market it to as many people as possible.
Interesting, interesting. Thanks so much, Monesi Musala, for that. Just as you keep on holding there, Dr. Yubrina Mura is going to join us any minute from now. And it's important to understand because the government has been telling us about this coronavirus. And up until now, we still have not been able to attach a face to it. So I want to loop in Dr. Ahmed Yusuf from the Muslim Education Council. And Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, from what I'm understanding, looking at the memorandum that you presented to the said COVID-19 Education Committee by the President, you are suggesting rather that schools at least to be reopened. Of course, with the government putting in some measures for as far as addressing this pandemic is concerned. We saw what happened in France when the schools were reopened. Within 1 week, over 700 school-going children were able to test positive COVID-19. Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, do you still think it's a good idea to go back and reopen schools in this country?
We still think that schools have to open at one time or another. The schools cannot remain closed indefinitely. The question is when and how. The when, that can be determined by the science, because you cannot just say you'll open the schools tomorrow, or day after tomorrow, or next month, or the month after that. The question that you have to ask yourself is, you close the schools. Why did you close the schools? Have the reasons why you close the schools, are they not there anymore? And the important thing to think about is the risk factor. Because here we are dealing with the lives of kids. The children are the ones who are going to go to the school. The teachers are the ones who are going to be there. And then there are also their families, because there are so many types of schools. There are private schools, there are public schools, there are day schools, there are boarding schools, and so on and so forth.
Interesting enough, from a memoranda that you submitted, I see that more emphasis was put on the basic education. Is that correct?
Yes.
And why would you do that?
We did that because the basic education is where the most children are. Here we are talking about from pre-primary, primary, and secondary. And there is where I'm talking about. There is the risk factor. And if you talk about just one sector, for example, the day schools, primary schools, here kids commute from home to schools. How do they commute? There is public transport, there is school transport. And you will see that in public transport they share with the rest of the public. There is the biggest risk, because they will be overcrowded with other people, they will be crowded amongst themselves, and you can never know what they will take to the schools and share with other children. And you can never know what they will take back home to their parents and relatives when they go back home.
Okay. Thank you so much. Dr. Yubrina Mura, welcome for joining us. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to the discussion. Okay, I'm still having some issues connecting to Dr. Yubrina Mura. Monesi Musal, we're going to come back to you. In terms of business, you were on record in one of your social media handles, coming more than once, saying that, you see, it's not about the situation. Basically, one should come out despite the murky waters and still find how to be relevant with this pandemic. There are investors who liquidated their finances as COVID-19 struck. They liquidated their finances. And right now, when the president, the head of state, they are expecting that the head of state is going to open up the economy again. From where you're coming from where you're standing from your clientele, from your experience, What would you term as the most lucrative industries for one to invest in right now when the economy is just about to reopen?
Well, I think knowing the work that I'm in, I would say the first asset or the first point of investment has to be in yourself. Develop yourself, develop your skills, develop your network, develop your personal brand. And that way it provides a foundation for you to be able to implement your resources in the right way. Because if you don't have a good enough network, if you don't have a good enough brand, no matter how much money you have, you cannot capitalize on it. So the first point of investment for me is yourself. And then from there on, you can now look at other industries. And of course, the most important industry right now that's allowing us to even have this conversation is technology. Technology right now, I mean, you look at Zoom, you look at different applications that are allowing people to connect and continue to do their meetings and their work. These are really, if you have a bit of money, technology is the way to go and develop anything that can help people to connect and spread information and knowledge. Whether it's in the health sector, whether it's in logistics, whether it's in transport or finance, technology is the way to go. Furthermore, the next aspect for me would be people need to eat. So food security and anything to do with agriculture and food security is really going to be a good bet. As we can see, the commercial real estate environment is taking a hit because people are now starting to realize that they can work from home. I mean, the restrictions that have been placed as a result of this pandemic have meant that commercial spaces, both offices, recreational facilities, have really taken a hit. So it's not a safe space right now in terms of real estate, unless you're buying to sit on it and speculate, and then in the future when prices go back to normal, and you can actually make something out of it. But for me, investing in yourself, investing in technology, and investing in food is, for me, those are the aspects that you would really give you a good return in this time.
Thank you so much. Monesim Saleh, I should have asked you this from before. The president, in his interview with one of the media houses earlier on this week, he was saying that he's kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. He's stuck in a dilemma whether to choose livelihood or lives. For you, as an economist, just a straight answer. So which one did you go for? Do you pick livelihoods or life in this case? Monesi?
I have to go on the side of livelihood.
Livelihood.
Yes. I mean, if we have measures in place, if we have social distancing and we have the sanitizing and the face masks and whatever it is that can actually mitigate the spread of this virus, people need to eat, people need to have a sense of dignity, and especially from a mental health perspective, you have to be able to go out and do what you need to do. If we continue to place restrictions on people's freedoms and movements, it's only going to be a matter of time before we descend into personal self-destruction and also societal breakdown by virtue of people being hungry and not having access.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And the best among yourselves have just joined us today. I'm talking about Dr. Damaris Kipto and Damaris Kipto, rather, from the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus, and Dr. Yubrina Morao, who just joined us, who's the medical doctor. Thank you so much, ladies, for making time for us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Damaris, I don't know why I keep on calling you doctor every time. I keep on calling you doctor. I think you should, that prefix suits you. Damaris Kipto. Thank you so much. Damaris, straight to you. Questions are still lingering over the existence of this virus because up until now, we still have not been able to put up a face. We've still not been able to attach a face to this virus. The last government's effort to attach a face to this virus were they presented the survivors of the coronavirus, that is Brenda and Brian, it was not taken well with netizens. So there are still questions or doubts rather still lingering on people's minds over the existence of this virus. Damaris, I know I've asked you this before, and the Minister of Health has again, once over and again, done that. But again, we're getting pressure from our audience as well and our viewers. So I'm going to ask you kindly to at least just authoritatively clear this rumors or rather doubts, if you don't mind, please, Damaris. Damaris? Damaris? Okay, I think we are still having issues with that. Damaris? Okay. Dr. Ibrina Mora, crossing over. World Health Organization predicted that this virus is here to stay for longer. And again, we are optimistic because a lot of people, just like my brother Monesi Musalia, they have chosen livelihood over lives. So we are optimistic that the next address of the nation by the president is going to at least flex some of those strict measures from uplifting the curfew, maybe people to resume work from the office, of course, adhering to social distancing, face mask, hand wash, hand sanitizing, and all that. How then would you recommend that we could equip ourselves to protect, so as to protect ourselves from this virus moving forward, if at all the nation is going to be opened up? Dr. Ibrina.
Thank you, Faisal, for that. I'd like to anticipate that we have that we are going to get some of the measures that have been. But the most question that we need to ask is as a society, are we prepared? We have the information. We are ready to put up the. And are we medically, and socially for easing of the measures that to take care or to detect this virus? As you said correctly, with us for some time, and it's going to be with us sometime again. We are very cognizant of the hardships, our lives, and again, it is a real threat to our. So then I think all the stakeholders in employment, we all need to come together and prioritize that is at our health and our health, an issue of national security, and possibly a very staged way of easing without being sensitive and being very objective.
I think we're having some small technological issues there with Dr. Ibrina Murai and Madam Damaris Kiptor from the National Emergency Response Team. I'm going to get back to technology in a few, but still, at the same time, Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, still on matters education. Economy has been crumbled, has been crunched down on its knees, and some of these schools are privately owned, or rather even the ones that are owned by the government. Again, as we gave the example of France in our previous question, France opened schools, or rather reopened schools, and within 1 week, at least 700 new cases of coronavirus from the peoples. Do you think we can take that risk as a nation? That is one. Secondly, do you think we have the resources to address the worst case scenario in case the schools are going to be reopened? Coming from an educationist, what would be your take on that?
You know, as I said before, we cannot close the schools indefinitely because education is a program, and one group gives way to another group, and another group gives way to another group. For example, there will be students waiting to go to university, and those who go to university will be giving way to those who are in primary schools to go to secondary schools, and so on and so forth. If you break that chain, that program, then you create a backlog.
Is it really breaking the chain or just pausing the chain?
You can say that you are pausing the chain, but then there will be people waiting in the queue, and that queue can get to be very, very long. And we must understand that this virus is there to stay with us. So we have to be able to find ways and means of how to live with it. The government has to, no matter how much anxious they are to resume the school program, they have to put the necessary measures to make sure that the students will be safe.
Former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, came out strongly earlier on this week to condemn and rather put educationists on hold, those who are pushing for the schools to be reopened, and say that we cannot risk the life of our children for just simply education. He said that education, for as much as it's important, but lives are much more important. And I can tell that a lot of people are reading from the same script. What would be your take on that?
I can say that we must find ways of mitigating the risks.
And part of the mitigating is putting the children at home and putting the education at hold for some time.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Life has to go on and life cannot stop. The government has to find ways and means of making sure the students have to go to school and that when they are there, they are safe. Because life itself is a risk. And we cannot say that because there is a risk, we'll stop life.
Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, but again, if you can see, especially in our public schools, I mean, basic necessities like walls and blackboards and electricity and even furniture is a problem. So how then can we be able to address and mitigate the measures that you are suggesting, social distancing, or rather physical distancing, talk of masks, talk of sanitizers and hand washing equipment, all those. How do you think the government is capacitated to seriously provide that, if at all some of the public schools within the country are lacking some basic necessities as basic as water or even furniture or even walls in the schools?
Yeah, I think this is the time, Bwana Faisal, for us to take stock and ask ourselves, why should there be those disparities? And this is the time for us to actually take measures to correct those disparities. We cannot live with that type of situation forever, where there are some schools which are deprived and there are some schools which are well off. The government must find ways and means of reducing the imbalances between those who don't have and those who have. And this is the time for that.
Okay, thanks so much. Mr. Munesi Musale will be having another engagement. So, Mr. Munesi Musale, allow me just to have you to get two more questions before I release you. One is for the entrepreneurs who just started getting momentum. You see, the country's economy was already on its knees before the pandemic. Now with the pandemic, it's undescribable, according to some economists like David Ndii. It's undescribable to describe current economies. A number of retrenchment in big corporates, in private sector, a number of retrenchments, even from the parastatals, a number of institutions retrenched their employees, hence increasing the rate of unemployment within the country. So there are entrepreneurs who had already started to gain momentum, took up some loans here and there, started to gain momentum before the COVID-19 pandemic. Now with this pandemic that stalled everything in this world, Mr. Munesi Musale, what would be the best strategy for them to get back into the game, and how do they brand or rebrand themselves for them to still fit into the market?
Two words, Faisal: relevance and value. This should be the conversation every single entrepreneur, anybody who's been laid off, anybody who's going through a difficult period, if they can focus on finding out in their environment, where they live, where they exist, their community, their society, what is of value right now? And are they in a position to provide that which is of value? What is relevant right now? What do people need? And are you in a position to provide those needs? And if you're not in a position yourself, do you have a network or a group of people who can assist and help you plug those gaps, where you can start to coexist together, band together, join forces, so that you can start to meet those needs and actually help make ends meet? Most importantly is your peace of mind and your mental health. Because obviously this is a very stressful time. And so anybody who is thinking about providing relevance and value must also protect their mental health in whatever ways they can.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Mr. Monesi Musaleh. Dr. Ibrina Mora, I'm glad to have you back. Thank you. Karibu sana. Dr. Ibrina, from the way you were answering your question the last time, we got a little bit of technical heat rather. We could not get you clearly. So I'm going to ask you once again, please, if you don't mind, to answer that question. But again, all this and more, Dr. Ibrina Mora, if you allow me, we just have to do it after the break. We need to pay our bills. We need to show some of these advertisers products and services. We need to pay our bills. But anyway, not after mshahara, but all that after the break. Thanks so much, Monesi Musaleh, for making time this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Faisal.
Dr. Ibrina Mora, you're going to be back after the break, please. Don't go away. Thank you.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Wanashitati nashta, watakaowafisha nyinyi ni malaika wa mauti.
Ishara zetu zinazotuongoza.
Ndipo hata Mwenyezi Mungu Subhanahu wa Ta'ala katika Qur'ani,
pokea ufahamu,
asema
na tahadhari,
la yanju min dhaqtati alqabri salihun wala talihun,
yazingatie,
haokoki na kufinywa na kaburi yoyote.
Jiunge na Sheikh Ali Bahero katika bishara zetu kila Jumanne saa 2 usiku kwenye Horizon TV.
Kiumbe dhaifu lakini jasiri,
alitunukiwa sura nzima,
sura inayompa daraja yake inavyostahiki. Sharti ajigambe.
Naam, na pepo ipo chini ya nyayo zake.
Mpamba nyumba na nyoyo za wapendwa wake,
anayebeba majukumu yake pasina kupinga.
Mtazamaji, je, unamfahamu anayezungumziwa?
Bila ya kusahau hadhi yake na haki zake.
Ungana nami Rahma Swaleh na Sheikh Juma Amir,
tukuelimishe na kukupa mwelekeo katika maisha ya ndoa
kwenye kipindi Dira ya Mwanamke,
kila Jumapili saa 2 usiku majira ya Afrika Mashariki ndani ya Horizon TV.
Horizon TV, kurunzi ya taifa.
Thank you so much for that lovely countdown. My director this afternoon, Abdul Ghafur Anasi. Producer Suleiman of Tumbo sends his regards to all our viewers back at home as well. And to our guests, thank you so much for standing by. Dr. Yubrina Mora, back to you. World Health Organization predicted that this virus is here to stay for longer. How can we then be well equipped, even as we are optimistic and anticipating that some of these strict measures for as far as addressing this pandemic is concerned, they are going to be lifted, set from the dusk till dawn, or is it dawn till dusk? It's dusk till dawn curfew, and work from home directives from the government, among many others. Dr. Brina Mora, so how well can we equip ourselves to protect ourselves from contracting this virus?
That we need to be cognizant of the fear and the economic hardships that come. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you, Dr. Ali.
Okay, so the economic hardships are there, but here is a step of I don't think into economic or downfall, but still we have to make sure that you mentioned earlier that live on a day-to-day basis. So if they have to get out for them to get something to eat, then the question is, how do they balance? How do they able to and what's happening out here? But there are not things going on. Exist. So how do we lose them? So my thoughts are, we need to really manage economic.
It's still some technical hitches there getting to Dr. Yubrina Mura, and we got Madam Damaris Kipto got an emergency meeting that she had to attend to, and hence she had to leave the discussion. But again, apologies from Ms. Damaris Kipto. Still having some technical issues there with Dr. Yubrina Mura. Is going to be solved in a few. Mr. Munessa Musalia, thank you so much for standing in. Mr. Munessa Musalia, we have been talking since this discussion started. We have been discussing, or rather talking about the entrepreneurs, the investors and all that. But again, there is a very important market here. There is a very important group here that we are calling the employees, who have been equally affected. Some are still working with shifts, others going under some serious pay cuts, and others like us working 100%. Alhamdulillah. So moving on, past this pandemic, again, you talk about rebranding, you talk about value, you talk about relevance. Mr. Munessa Musalia, but again, all those who are in relation to the investors or the entrepreneurs. But again, for as far as this employee is concerned, how else, or rather, how can he be relevant? What are the necessary skills? What are the necessary skills that he can equip himself with to still be relevant within the work premises and still contribute value to the work premises? Mr. Munessa Musalia. Again, having some technical hitches right there. He said that we should invest in technology. So for all the investors watching this, this afternoon, the live Real Talk Show, you see that we need technology. Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, welcome back.
Thank you.
Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, your point 12, that in regards to COVID-19 prevention requirements, government should consider possibly of adding extra classrooms, learning in shifts. Again, so this is a recommendation that you have put in cross. Do you think the government is capacitated to address such? One, this is regard to the government schools. Secondly, what about the investors who have been hit hardly by this economy in terms of investing extra in classes, in terms of investing in extra teachers, in terms of investing in extra resources for learning process to go on swiftly? How practical do you see this point, given the tough economic times in this country?
You know, the way I know government works, and I have worked in the government for quite a lot of time, the government can always find the money for anything that they want to do. Take, for example, if there's famine in the country at any time, the money will be found from somewhere. Now, education is a very, very, very important thing in this, in any country, in any society. So if the government needs to find money for building extra classrooms, for putting extra infrastructure to make sure that children can go back to school, the money can actually be found. Your second question about can you just remind me? Your second question was? Hello?
Yes, Dr. Ali. You're talking about, you're saying about the entrepreneurs, the investors. I mean, how practical is it for them to invest in this memo that you presented to the government?
The private schools can also find ways and means of doing things. And you know, working in schools in shifts does not really necessarily mean that extra classrooms must be built, because the kids can go to school in shifts. One shift can go during the morning and another in the afternoon and in the evening. It is quite possible to do that, and it has been done before. But if there is need to find the funds for putting extra infrastructure, parents can actually come up with the funds. The government can actually come up with the funds, and investors
again
can actually come out with the funds for doing that kind of thing.
As you said here in this point 12, and I quote, that in regards to COVID-19 prevention requirements, government should consider possibility of adding extra classrooms and learning in shifts. Extra classrooms and learning in shifts. Given the tough economic conditions, do you think it's practical? That's one. Secondly, from your answer, you mentioned and you say that the government will find resources for anything it needs. That's okay. So if the government can find resources, in this case, in this context, would it be better to invest in health facility or education facility? And not to undermine education in any form or shape whatsoever, but which one do you think takes precedence in this pandemic?
I think both are equally important. The health is important and education is important. Education is important because if there is ignorance, then I think in any country everything will go wrong. You have to educate our kids, we have to educate our society, and every cohort must be taken care of. If there's a cohort which is behind and waiting in the queue to get into the next transition level, then it means that we are behind by 1 year or more. And that one is not an acceptable solution. So the group which is agitating for the students to repeat a year, I think they are not living in this world. We have to find ways and means of, and it can be done, because examinations can be moderated to make sure that they don't have to cover everything that should have been covered.
Okay.
And the students can go back to school, they can go back and do the examinations and proceed to the next level. It's not cast in steel that everything in the curriculum must be covered for the students to proceed to the next level.
Perfectly fine. Thank you so much. Dr. Ibrahim Amora, always glad to have you. Again, technology is really conspiring against us this afternoon.
I am very sad.
And that's our brother Manes Musalia told the investors outside there if they want to invest, one of the most creative industries now is technology. So I hope they invest and they get better infrastructure to communicate. Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Ibrahim Amora. So you were saying something for as far as taking preventive measures moving forward when the economy and the country is going to be reopened up. Please, you may proceed.
Like the is talking about, but from the health, the questions we need to ask ourselves: what are the repercussions? Have we put up measures in place in schools that will make sure these kids stay in social distance? He's suggesting that maybe we should have more classes built. That's look at solution, not a show. And these children that are, how old are they? Do they get the instructions given to them? So, like, if you have a old school, at 8-year-old is in P, and you have a 14-year-old, what we call class 8, then you have a fourth former who is an adult able to comprehend similarly. So those are the things we ask us. We cannot just think to our side. We are being, and we are answering the line. Because COVID is a real virus, is going to be here with us. But no matter how long it's affected. And something else about the young children is that children are the start of that virus. Because essentially they don't, but they can move from one child and be a grandmother in the house. So and the patients we take and to try and say, let's open up schools, up restaurants, let's open up stuff. They have to be very well through. And I suggest it's a very staged opening up. Like we can extend the curfew a bit, and then we start ready and able to follow the. Then we move to the next phase. But just pick up one day and open everything. They are not being realistic, and we are being reactionary and not.
Okay. So if I get you correctly, then you suggest things to be opened up gradually, step by step, and of course putting up strict measures as well, even as we are opening up slowly, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ibrahim Amora, as a medical practitioner, you have been on the forefront fighting COVID-19. What would you ask Kenyans to do for as far as flattening the curve is concerned? Because we have seen a lot of directives, a lot of recommendations from the Ministry of Health, from you, the medical practitioners. But yet, if anything, then the numbers are on an ascending trajectory. Like we are still not yet flattening the curve. So what is it that we are not doing correctly?
Behavior. 70% ability to contain the virus is behavioral. And people are not taking of changing their behavior. As we're having this discussion, going with us for some time, putting into consideration that our cultures, expectations out there, places of work have to change. And therefore, if we change our behaviors, maybe COVID should not be managed by healthcare providers, but maybe by behavioral scientists. Because the one thing I've noticed among Kenyans is the resistance to behavioral change. And I think that's what the president contemplates opening up.
Interesting.
Where Kenyans are they're stubborn, some of them are ignorant, others are just arrogant. So we need to ask ourselves what of leadership, from health to education to commerce. What we can do, the different areas need to be opened up, change our behavior, so that we are able to salvage our economy and what has caused for us.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dr. Brinamara. Because in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you maybe to give us your parting shot this afternoon as we are wrapping up our show this afternoon. Dr. Ibrina.
Yeah, my parting shot would be, we have a new norm. We have a virus that is going, and so we need to adjust our behaviors, our of our economic. So I'm follow up and adjust that have been contained virus. Also be very proactive in our approach.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrina Mora. Always a pleasure having you on our set and part of our panel every other afternoon at Live Real Talk. Thank you so much for always making time for us, Dr. Ibrina Mora. Thank you so much. Dr. Ahmed Yusuf from the Muslim Education Council. I'm going to ask you to give your parting shot this afternoon as you're wrapping up our show. Dr.
Thank you very much. My parting shot is that this thing concerns each and every one of us. I agree with Dr. when she says it is a question of behavior. But it's also behavior on part of the government. And the government must work together with society to be able to conquer this thing. Without that, if the government is on one side and the society is on the other side, there is always going to be conflict. They must work together. They must have the same objective. The government must educate the society as much as possible and put measures to make sure that that behavior which is required is possible. Because you cannot have a curfew at 7 and then require everybody to go home by that time, and then there are no means of transport to go. And people are queuing very, very close together to get into the available transport. That is a situation where society and the government are not working together.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed Yusuf, and thanks so much, Dr. Ibrina Murad. Thank you so much, Damaris Kipto, and Manase Musalia for making time for us this afternoon. As we were discussing normalcy, we are anticipating that the government very soon, very, very soon, is going to lift the curfew, or rather some of the strict measures that they have put in place to address this pandemic, so as we can go back to our livelihood. As we are summarizing, I picked some very wise words from Nancy Pelosi, where she says, "We have so much room for improvement. Every aspect of our lives must be subjected to an inventory of we are taking responsibility." So for as much as we are shouting that it is our right for government to open up the economy, for government to open up the country, so as we resume back our day-to-day chores or our day-to-day responsibilities or hustles and bustles, again, we do have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and your neighbors. You're going to be asked about that. If not by anyone, then by the Almighty. So as we are going about our daily hustles, as we are going about our daily lives, we should always remember that rights always is accompanied with responsibilities. So for as much as you're demanding your rights, you should take your part in accomplishing your responsibilities. I've been your host, Faisal Kassim, and this has been Live Real Talk. See you next week, simply same time, as we will be having other great minds discussing another great topic right here every Friday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Thank you so much, and always a pleasure being your host on Live Real Talk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.